This is Psych 466, the Psychology of Sex. This is your professor, Taylor Oliver, and we are going to go through Chapter 2, titled Sex and Evolution. Now, the first part of this chapter is just the simple question, what exactly is evolution? Now, you might have heard about it in your biology classes, but it might have been a while since you've really thought about what evolution really is. And so in the definition in our book, it's really the change in the genetic composition of populations over time. So individuals within a species, they'll actually differ from one another. So we always talk about differences, between species, but within a species, there is quite a bit of difference as well. Some of this, of course, is due to genetics. Some of it is due to cultural or if we're talking about species, social differences. But the big part about evolution is natural selection. So within this, group of animals that have varying, degrees of differences, if a trait specifically is advantageous, then that means that it will become more pervasive over time. And if a trait is disadvantageous, then that means it'll be less pervasive over time. So I always give the example of the billy goats. So goats have very small hoofs and they can get pretty high up on mountains. However, at one point, there would have been goats that had big hooves and small hooves and medium-sized hooves. So the reason why we think that the billy goats were able to get higher is because there was probably more food up on the mountain. So what happened is if there was natural variation and there were billy goats that had big hooves, medium hooves, and small hooves, the ones with smaller hooves were able to get a little bit higher on the mountain and probably had more resources for food. Now, of course, that would make them look more desirable to the female billy goats, and it also would help them stay alive longer since they would be able to eat and, of course, feed their families. So what would happen is the males with the smaller hooves would then probably survive, while the ones with the bigger hooves would start to die and not be able to reproduce. Then the next generation of billy goats would have smaller hooves, but there would still again be variation within that. So within this new variation, this new group of billy goats, there would be, again, a small, medium, and large hoofs. Now, of course, all their hoofs would probably be slightly smaller than the generation before, but again, this would happen where maybe they ran out of food in the base of the mountain, and so now the billy goats that could get a little bit higher were able to get more food and, of course, be more desirable for mates and be able to reproduce at a higher rate. And now you can see how slowly by slowly these billy goats would have slightly smaller hooves. Okay? Okay. However, of course, this all has to happen through genes, right? It has to happen through DNA. So these things have to be able to be heritable so that they can be passed down, and therefore they can change, right? So for humans, we have linear stretches of DNA. Really, all animals have DNA. And these are just chromosomes within the nucleus of each cell of an organism. And humans themselves are estimated to have 20,000 to 25,000 genes, so quite a few. And each of these genes contain information, and this is something that can interact with the environment over time, which, of course, is what results in evolution. So these changes have to be something that can be passed down, much like I said with the billy goats and the hooves. It's not something that can be changed immediately, like the billy goats with the big hooves aren't able to all of a sudden get smaller hooves. But as a species, since this is a gene that can be passed on, it can actually be, interacting with the environment in such a way that it would cause the smaller billy goats to have a better chance at living because they had more resources provided to them. Okay, so part of also what needs to happen here is that you have to understand reproduction for you to realize why these changes might happen. So most multicellular organisms are capable of sexual reproduction as opposed to asexual reproduction. And so as you can see, these two are slightly different. So following my cursor, asexual reproduction would be passing on your genes at 100%. So you don't reproduce with any other animals. These would mainly be like single cell organisms or whatnot. They split into two, and both of their both of the offsprings are identical to the first one, correct? So for example, this, let's say it's a grandparent, has the exact DNA of these, which has the exact DNA of these, which has the exact DNA of these, right? So all of these organisms are identical to each other, right? That would be asexual reproduction. Humans, on the other hand, have what we call sexual reproduction. So you cannot reproduce on your own. You need to have another person involved so that you can actually pass the genes along. So in this case, let's say, again, this is a grandparent. They have sex with someone else, and now these offspring are 50% genetic information from this grandparent and 50% from here. So you can see it's slightly diluted, right? Now if, say, one of these two offsprings, let's say the one above, then again reproduces, and then these are now these offspring are now 50% of the genetic information on this, of this organism and of this organism, right? Which now would lead only to 25% of the original organism. You do this one more time. Let's say this offspring mates with this organism, and now we have this, which these offsprings would be 50% of this organism and 50% of this organism. Which would then be 25% of this organism and I believe 12.5% of this organism. So if reproduction is all about passing on your genes, one might wonder, why would humans have asexual reproduction versus sexual reproduction? Because in theory, this organism already after 1, 2, 3 generations has only got 12% of their genes in there, very few, right? And in a couple more generations, it's going to be so minuscule that their, passing on of their genes is very little, as opposed to up here in asexual reproduction, this organism after 1, 2, 3 generations has just as much genetic information about itself here as it did here. So if evolution is all about passing your genes, then wouldn't asexual reproduction truly be better? Well, not exactly, and this is why. Partly the reason why asexual reproduction is really dangerous in terms of a species moving on is that it's an exact replica, which means that even the harmful mutations are going to be exactly the same for the parents and the offspring, right? So they're exactly identical. So that means, let's say that this harmful mutation here, which both the purple guy has and the green guy has, these harmful mutations is something that in this environment would kill them off, okay? So this is, let's say that these are for the goats, these would be bigger hoofs or something, right? Or maybe this is a cancer that is going to wipe out this population. Well, that means that all of the purple population, no matter how many times it's reproduced, so if it's thousands and thousands of times, every single person or every single organism that came from this purple batch would die, and every single organism from this green batch would die. So you can see how an entire organism and population can die very quickly with just one harmful mutation. This is the problem with asexual reproduction. And so although you are passing your genes along at 100%, you are definitely putting you and all of your offspring at risk, because if any, if there's one harmful mutation that could take out one organism, it's going to take out all of the organism's offspring as well. Now with sexual reproduction, you would have to have a mixture of genes, right? So the ones down here are the purple, and this is like a cream color. So again, let's say that this is the harmful mutation that somehow in this environment would kill whatever organism has this harmful mutation. Well, let's say that these parents had 4 offsprings. Now, if you notice, only 2 of these 4 have this harmful mutation. So just in one generation already, only half of the offspring are going to get, going to die in this environment. So you can see there's so many more combinations, which means that it's harder for any specific harmful mutation to wipe out an entire population, or a specific virus, let's say, that, that is can attach to people who have this harmful mutation or something. So it helps the entire species live longer. So hence why we have sexual reproduction versus asexual reproduction.